That's all right. I'm pretty sure that things will go off track anyway.
They always do, which is nice. I think that's why people enjoy coming along. Hello, everybody. We are live. If you are here already, please say hi. If you're not, then I've got nothing to say to you just yet. I'll give you 30 seconds to join. It's just that. It's what we do. Chelsea, I think you said you watched a couple of these, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah. So you've seen the ramble, the mumble at the beginning.
Yes, actually, I watched the one. Oh, I can never remember names. The one with the man who did the mindfulness at HSBC, I think it was.
Yeah, Sean.
And you were just like, so as I told you, I just ramble for a minute and a half, and you were just talking. I was like, oh, Rich.
This is what we do. It's I don't know if people enjoy it, but who cares? It's like so part of the podcast now that I just do it anyway.
Do you know what though? There is nothing worse than going on to a webinar or something and there just being silence, and everyone's just like, what do we do? What do we do? But I am also someone who hates small talk. Like, I'm not very good at
it. I think 10 years as a personal trainer, you get quite good at small talk.
Yes, I can imagine. When I'm in the gym, I can hear the PTs talking to their clients, and I'm just like, you must go through this same conversation so many times. It's the same for hairdressers, I guess, as well.
I think it's a bit easier for us as PTs because you see a person more regularly than a hairdresser.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's consistently about something in life, whereas hairdressers are either sharing their own bits or catching up.
Yeah, or what are you doing this weekend? Anything nice?
Yeah. What have you been up yet? I'm just so nosy though. I'm just like, yeah, come on, I'll ask this question. I enjoy. I want to know that. I want to know the answer. Adam, it's nice to see you. Thanks for joining. If you are here watching already, please say hi. So we know that we are talking to people. If you have any questions for Chelsea or myself whilst we go through this, add them to the comments. I will ask Chelsea when there's obviously an appropriate time. I think, Chelsea, can you see the comments on the side already?
Yes, I can.
Good news. So we'll get started. First off, hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. Chelsea, thank you for coming along and being on the podcast and sharing some thoughts. I will get you to introduce yourself in a second, but let me get my boring intro / sales pitch out of the way. Because then once I'm out of the way, it's all about you. And as I said and scared you with beforehand, you're the star of the show.
Don't say that.
Pressure, no pressure. Which one do you want? So yeah, obviously you got most majority of you, if you're watching already or are listening back on the new podcast. Did you see that, Chelsea?
Yes, congratulations! How exciting! You're a
Stephen Bartlett, basically.
Yeah, on Spotify.
Yeah. I'm a proper podcaster. But yeah, anyway, if you don't, you should know me by now. If you don't, my name's Rich. I'm the founder of Employees Health, which is a workplace wellbeing support company. I'm also a high performance coach, helping in leadership, senior leaders, managers, executives manage their personal and professional life so that they thrive for long as possible, really. Trying to live really happy, healthy, productive lifestyle. Plus loads more. Ask me to find out. My sales pitch is always crap. I'm so bad at doing this. Anyway, that's the hard part out of the way. The easy part is asking you questions, Chelsea.
Easy for you.
Yeah, I mean, I was normally I'm a bit more prepared, but today I've turned up with 5 seconds to go and I haven't not done any questions. So I put questions together really last minute. But luckily, it's a conversation, so we'll take our random detours on the way. Hi, Chelsea.
Hi, Rich.
Welcome. Can you just say hello to everybody and tell people what you do?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Chelsea. I'm head of people at Tomorrow Group. Tomorrow Group is a collection of digital agencies. So I look after 3 agencies in total, and I look after the whole employee lifecycle from attraction right through to parting ways. My passion is really making sure that every moment that matters, our employees have a great experience. And Yeah, I love what I do.
Love it. Yeah, I can tell that. Obviously, with all my people on the podcast, we have a conversation beforehand, and I just love that your enthusiasm and excitement for your job and the people you help, and obviously that called through, and that's why I wanted to get you on here so quickly. And we shouldn't forget as well that Tomorrow Group has just been just become a finalist of the Great British HR Awards.
Yeah, the British HR Awards.
There you are, not the Great British.
Yeah,
The
I
British HR
forgot
Awards.
about that.
There you go. Look, but you also won a number of awards elsewhere as well for how you guys look after people as well, right?
Yes, we've been ranked in Great Places to Work for the last 8 years. We've the last 3 years been recognised in Flexer Awards, so being a truly flexible employer. Yeah, so thing to be really, really proud of.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess what we should also notice is your Tomorrow Group as a whole is about 100 people.
Yeah, about 100 people.
There you go. So it's some relatively small people. I mean, I'm a company of one, so I'm a small company. 100 people's a lot more than me, so it's not that small. And so people obviously there's still some challenges in there, and but obviously they're your own unique challenges, which we'll discuss throughout. Before we do that, though, it'd be nice to hear a little bit more about you and a little bit more about your journey, to kind of why you are here today, and also like what's created all this enthusiasm and excitement behind being a HR professional and ahead of people, right? So could you just kind of share your story and your journey?
Sure. So I've actually been at Tomorrow Group for 11 years, so a long time. And I think that really stems from the culture. It's such a lovely culture. When I started, we were a really small team, and I would say it was a very different culture at that time. It was still a culture that really cared about the people, and the people were first, but the way we worked wasn't very flexible. It was just a bit, yeah, it just wasn't what it is now. And throughout time, we've scaled up, we've scaled down, we've acquired companies. So it's always been really interesting. But at the core of everything we do, people has always been our main focus, and making sure we look after our people, that they have a great working environment. Because without them, you're nothing. Like you don't have a business. So yeah, it's been quite the journey at 11 years. And my COO and myself were talking about this the other day, and we were saying, because she's been here 14 years, and like no year has ever been the same, which has kept it really interesting, which is probably why we've been here so long. And just the type of people coming into the business are really different now to when they used to be. Obviously, employees have different kind of wants and needs from their employer now. So yeah, it's been quite the journey, but one that's been really interesting. And the pandemic, which obviously is quite a long time ago now, 4 years? Yeah, 4 years, almost around this day, really kind of changed things in terms of the world of work. And I know maybe a bit late to the party to keep referring back to it, but I think it really did change work for the better. And that's, I think, what has made us really stand out in the last few years of how we have navigated that, how we've changed the way we worked, and how we look after our people.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it shows true dedication, and also like the variety in small organizations when somebody stays in an organization for 11 and 14 years by the looks of it, right? Like in small organizations, there is a lot more going on. You can be a little bit more involved with your people and how you look after those and how you navigate different challenges. And as you said, 4 years ago, we had a proper crisis and had to manage that. And it sounds like you've come out of that in a really strong stance. I think what we need to do is actually look at what you've been up to since that kind of time, right? So tell me about,
I was like, oh yeah, I need to think.
Yeah, I hope you're prepared. I hope you got a good memory. But yeah, so since that kind of time, what have you? Okay, what's the question I want to ask here? What was the learning from COVID, and what did you do straight away in response to that?
Wow. Going back 4 years, I think the biggest thing for us and the immediate thing that stood out for us was how it really impacted our team and their well-being. You know, we had always had a really great culture. It was very social. We did loads of social things in the office. It really felt like a family. People, you know, would stay behind at work to hang out with one another and, you know, go out for drinks. And then suddenly people were forced into isolation where they couldn't see their family, couldn't see their friends. There was a lot of instability, a lot of uncertainty. So I think for us, that really, we were like, people's well-being is really affected here. And then I guess that just changed like life and society expectations about well-being and what people wanted from their employer. So we've definitely, before, we cared about people's well-being, but definitely afterwards it ramped up a lot. And that was our focus, on making sure that we've got a healthy, happy, engaged team. Because yeah, without them, like I said before, you don't have anything.
Yeah, I think some companies don't, or people don't look at their employees as such an important resource.
Yeah, which is like baffling, mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
Because your people determine your success or your failure as a business. So why would you not want to have them happy, healthy, engaged? Why would you not put effort into their well-being? You know, especially in the industry we work in, we're a digital industry and it's an agency. So it's very fast-paced, it's client-based. We pay people for their ideas and the things that they bring to the organization that comes from their brain. So why would you not put an emphasis on well-being? Because when people aren't happy, or when, you know, they're perhaps, you know, don't have good well-being at that moment, you're not going to get the best from them. So yeah, and I can go on for ages about this, and it stems from the culture, the impact you have on people. But yeah, it just blows my mind that, yeah, leaders don't see people as such an important resource.
Yeah, well, save some of that stuff, because you're going to have to share some of that stuff in a minute. But no, I completely agree with you, right? So on that point of how you've been looking after people, what have you been doing? So obviously COVID happened, and a big change in response happens, and with you being so kind of focused and understanding of how your people impact your organization and the success of your organization, how do you then support those people in it?
So we do lots of different things, and most recently we've really shifted to, so we shifted from the people and culture team to the people experience team, because the fundamental thing for us is each person having a good experience and really identifying what those moments that matter are for employees. And, you know, one of those might be onboarding, it might be career development, it might be a life event. You know, people experience bereavements, they experience going on parental leave, they experience relationship breakdowns. All of that affects your well-being. So, you know, we can't ignore and separate life from work. So what we've done is really mapped out those those moments that matter, and being really intentional on how we create great connections at those points and great experiences, going beyond just processes. You know, there's no point putting in a really strong onboarding process, but then actually the connection and the moments that matter aren't there. Like, oh yeah, I've ticked my box, I've made a 12-week plan. Okay, but then how are you then setting that person up for success? How are you checking in with them? You know, how are you empowering them to really make the most of their probation period? You know, how are you setting them up for success? Are you just assuming that they can integrate in a culture? I think people forget also that when someone new joins an organization, they don't know how you work. They don't know what your processes are. They don't know the different personalities they're working with. So within that, how are you being really intentional about creating those environments where that person can thrive? I think I've lost track of the question now, Rich.
What are you doing? What are you doing for your people? There you go. The people experience bit.
Yeah, that big important bit. So yeah, it's really mapping out what those things mean, and I think it's also being flexible with the different people, because not everyone's going to want or need the same thing, and how you approach things for one person will be really different. So for us, what we're really trying to do is create this culture with our managers where they're curious and they can have these open conversations with their team to find out what they do need in those moments that matter. You know, it's a given, or you know, it's well known that as a manager you need to adapt your management style. But how do you do that? Like, what does that look like? If I was a fly on the wall, what would that actually mean? So I really think that stems from being curious, getting to know your team, and being really intentional about how you want to create that good experience for them. One of the questions we always ask managers, if you know, say someone's experienced a bereavement, sorry to keep using that example, I think because it's top of mind, because I went through a personal bereavement last year. But you know, saying to someone, oh, or for example, if you have a manager come to, oh, Chelsea, what do we offer for compassionate leave? Okay, you have a policy, you have a process, but how would you want that person, if you were in that situation, what would you want your manager to do for you? You know, how would you want them to approach it? And I think sometimes reframing it can really make them think, okay, actually, yes, let's not hide behind processes in really difficult situations. Let's be curious and be open and have those conversations with the team.
Yeah, it's very much like a coaching culture, isn't it? It's a coaching mindset.
Yeah.
To always be curious and to think about it in a slightly different way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is the key skill of any manager, that I really truly believe they can make the biggest impact, is having that coaching mindset and that skill set, because it will just transform how you interact with your team, and it will also create that really strong trust in the relationship. I always really encourage coaching, and you know, say there's an underperforming issue, there's always a reason why. We just have to put our little detective hats on and find out what is causing that, and being curious and not making assumptions. So yeah, big advocate of coaching.
Thank you. You do my sales pitch after. One of them, obviously, the title is called "Being Intentional" or the impact of being intentional, and I think this is something which really stood out when we spoke originally, was how everything you do is thought about, and you just referred to it there about kind of, rather than just having policies and a process, it's intentionally thinking about a situation in a slightly different way, and intentionally trying to think about your culture, your people, the experience of all of that. For a manager, for the people, how do you make sure that that's continued or continuous throughout all the people in your workplace?
So what we do is we do regular manager training. I also have a lot of one-to-ones with managers to really try and embed and encourage that sort of mindset and that culture. I think you need, and it goes back to being intentional, is you need to have that culture that encourages that, and that you've been very intentional about the culture that you want to build. You know, are your behaviors and your actions, your interactions, are they aligned to how you're like what you're trying to build, like what is the intention, what is the culture you do want to build. And I think from there, if you have that really clear and you encourage that with your managers, that will naturally feed down and they'll build those subcultures. You'll have those real advocates within your team who also have that same mindset. So you almost need to have that little, like, I don't know, culture brokers who are like feeding the behaviors you want in.
Yeah, your role models.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've heard the term before, culture champions, but that sounds a bit cringe.
Yeah,
Sorry for anyone who has culture
culture
champions.
Yeah, 100%. I think yeah, having those role models within your organization who are super fans of the way you do things can really help create a really nice culture.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really hard for first-time managers as well when they've gone from being an individual contributor to then suddenly being responsible for a team. And you can fall very easily into hiding behind processes or policies, which, don't get me wrong, you need them. It'd be chaos if there wasn't, and there's legal implications. But I think I read something the other day and it really stuck with me, is that being a manager isn't a career progression, it's a career change.
Mm.
And yeah, I think it's so important to acknowledge that they're going through that change and that transition. So you almost need to have those role models to coach them through that and how to manage people and how to deal with those situations. And we, in our people strategy, we have a whole pillar on just managers and leaders because they are fundamental to the culture that you're trying to build. And when you're thinking about being intentional and having impact, they are the people who manage your team's performance. They manage the career conversations. They manage everyday interactions. They feed down the messages from leadership. They are the ones dealing with most of the team. And if you haven't thought about them and you're not being intentional about how you develop them, how you support them, yeah, it's a disaster.
Yeah, I completely disagree. Can we disagree? No, I completely agree. Sorry.
Feel free to disagree, Rich.
I don't know why disagree comes out of my mouth. And as you can imagine, being a senior leader coach and a leadership coach, I think there's so much responsibility that manager plays. And I was going to I'm glad you said that about the managers and leadership pillar. That was going to be my next question. Was you've mentioned how much focus and how much intentionality on your managers there is. What do you do? So what's included in that pillar and what kind of training and support is there for your managers and leaders?
Yeah, so we have regular manager training. So once a month, I will run a workshop with managers, and that would be on perhaps something that's coming up, or that's like diversity and inclusion or neurodiversity week. I also have a lot of one-to-ones with managers. I know that's not possible for everyone, and I think that's the beauty of being in a smaller team, in a smaller company, is I can have that FaceTime with people. And I think for managers, they find that time really useful to just talk to someone with no judgment, who's not in the day-to-day. It's not their manager, so they're not feeling like, oh, if I tell this, like speak to Chelsea about this, she's not going to think I'm underperforming or can't manage people or can't handle these situations. It's a completely safe space, and I look at things through a different lens, just naturally through my role, and can help them think through. So that's something we do a lot of. We've got a Slack channel that is dedicated just to managers, where we share tips, we share events. We're just embarking, I'm really excited about this, on our first leadership training program that we're doing externally, all about coaching, which I think is going to be really impactful. And I think the thing we can't miss is that it needs to stem from above as well, because if we're trying to create this with middle managers, but at the top, the senior leaders also aren't aligned or intentional about what they're doing, it's just just not gonna mesh. So I've been really lucky that I work with 3 amazing MDs who are really
On this
passionate.
call,
Yeah.
so you have to say nice things.
Oh, I don't know. Are they? Hello. And and my COO, my manager, she's amazing, and I've been with her right through the start, and she's always been very aligned with what we want to achieve as a culture. And our chairperson, who before we broke out into Tomorrow Group, she was the CEO of Found. She's also been very aligned as well. So I've been really lucky that it does mesh for us. But it's also, you know, when you do get to that senior leadership position, you are focused on the commercial aspects of things. You do have pressures. Like if you don't have a profitable business, you're putting people's jobs and their livelihoods at risk. So that's a lot of pressure. So sometimes you can find that disconnect with, okay, need to create a good people experience, but also I'm really pressured to be a profitable business, that sometimes perhaps the decisions that are made may feel confronting to that, or people might not understand. But at the core of what we do, even when you have to make difficult decisions, we think about how can we make this experience as positive as it can be in the circumstances. So actually, going back to the pandemic, we did have to make some people redundant, which was, we haven't had to do that often. We've only done that twice in the whole time I've been at Tomorrow Group. But, you know, we didn't just be like, oh, right, yeah, soz, off you go. You don't have a job anymore. We really supported them with helping with their CVs, connecting them with jobs that we had seen or people we knew who were looking for people. We did coaching with them. You know, we tried to make the experience as positive as it could be. And I think that's one of the really hard things is sometimes in the moment, perhaps when you're not exposed to the things that senior leaders have to experience, it can feel like, oh, what are you talking about? Creating a good experience because this happened. But then again, that goes back to being really intentional about the communication you have with people and thinking about how you're going to communicate it, when you're going to communicate it. You know, what do you want them to feel at that moment? What do you want them to be saying? Because people in your business, people who leave your business, they're your biggest PR people. You know, don't get me wrong, we've had a few interesting characters before.
I know. I'm just in awe of the cool things you're doing, and it's and this is why I called it being intentional. It's because I feel like everything you do has been thought about and discussed, and the way that you're trying to create that culture is from a very thought focused, people focused kind of angle. That's what I think is great. And the fact that you got a lot of focus on managers and senior leaders throughout that and making them buy into this culture is so important. And I loved it. And thank you for sharing that as well. I want to move into, you have a well-being strategy which looks unlike a lot of, just in a couple of areas, but really quite broad. When you break those down, they're quite broad. So you talk about a triangle. Can you talk to me a bit more in depth about your triangle?
Yeah, so I guess that's more about transactional, transactional, if you want to call it. That sounds like a very like corporate word, but something we do in terms of our benefits. So we have what we call a wellbeing triangle. So we offer financial coaching. I mean, you've just got your accreditation for being a financial coach, so you'll be well aware of how stressful finances are for people. So we have a benefit with BIPIT, and they offer one-to-one financial coaching that you can talk to them about, you know, getting out of debt, wanting to buy a house, saving, whatever it might be, wherever you are in your life. They do regular workshops. So it's really about closing that taboo about talking about money, because it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, stresses that people face, especially with, the cost of living crisis. No one can deny that. So we've got financial well-being, we've got physical well-being with gym subsidization, and then we've got mental well-being, and that's one-to-one therapy, as well as self-directed content through a lever. So yeah, we try and cover all of the main bases around well-being in terms of that respect.
Yeah, and I think as you alluded to earlier, slow down, Rich. As you alluded to earlier, you're quite a social group as well.
Yeah.
What and as I say that out loud, I want to ask the question around your kind of your flexible working policy. How do you create that social connection?
Yeah, it's a really big question, I think. So in terms of our policy, we have an agile working policy. We have an office, but we don't mandate days in the office. We allow people to make the right decision for them, for their team, and for their clients. Of course, there'll be instances where they're asked to come into the office for a client meeting, but on the whole, people should have that freedom and autonomy to choose where they work best. That we don't want people to come into the office to sit at a desk if they're not going to do their best work there. What's the point? I can't work in the office, just too distracting. People with ADHD, they might not be able to. So we've got complete flexibility around that. But with that, it goes back to being really intentional around the connections that you build, because that is lost. I truly, truly believe in flexible working, but I do think there are elements that you do miss from being flexible working. Things like informal learning or like informal connecting with other people. When you just hear what people are working on in an office, and you'd be like, oh, that's really cool. Maybe I could do that. Or I heard you were doing this. Can I get involved? Or even just learning informally, seeing how people interact with clients or with senior people. So I think that's missing. And the social element is a big thing, because some people can spend days not talking to anyone, and that can have a really big impact on someone's well-being. So what we do is we have an all hands on Friday, the whole Tomorrow group. We do that. We have a quiz at the end. It's a love and hate relationship with the quiz with the team. Some people quizzed out, but it does get quite competitive.
Yeah.
So we make sure we have that. All of the teams have regular online meetings, weekly online meetings. They have weekly, monthly in-person team meetings where they do spend the day learning, connecting. And then we also make a point of having really intentional connections throughout. So when someone's onboarding, they'll have a first day check-in with the people team. We'll make sure they have a buddy, that they're speaking to other people. We try and I try and really connect to people if I'm like, oh, I heard you're doing this for your team. Maybe you should speak to blah, blah, blah. So I think you need to have people who are really intentional about almost like pulling the strings to get people together, because sometimes they just need that. Not everyone has the confidence to be like, oh, let me write a Slack message to someone I've never spoken to before to ask them for a call. So yeah, we're really intentional about creating those social things. We also, sorry for going on a little bit, listing out these things, but we have every quarter, we have our quarterly business review where we all come together, we showcase work that's been done. We have, we then go for usually drinks afterwards. We then have our big summer social, our Christmas party. And when you ask people, like, what are the moments that have really stuck out for you when you've been at Tomorrow? So we do stay interviews. A lot of them say the social element. So you really need people to be intentional to kind of broker those relationships and make them like meaningful. Because let me tell you, having those water cooler conversations for a lot of people were painful. Yes, you could put some icebreaker questions, but most people dreaded it. Like, what do I say? I don't know this person.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm a big my personality needs social interaction. I need people in my life, and if I want to enjoy life, I need to have laughter, right?
Yeah.
And so, and that's one of the biggest things we noticed about lockdowns was when you take all of that away, we really struggled. And when I think about my workplaces, and there's only one. I've only ever been employed once for 10 months, 12 months. It's not because I was rubbish in my job. But when I think about those places, it's places I want to go because there's people there I want to see and have a good laugh with, have a good time with. Right?
Yeah.
If you can create that in a workplace, your people will enjoy going to work. They'll enjoy working for you because it's exciting, and then they'll go into the workplace, and because we all need that. And I think you said it again about 3 or 4 times just in the explanation of social interaction and social connection is being intentional about why you're going there, being intentional about what you get from doing that. I think it's so important.
Yeah, and people get so energized when they're around people and they speak to people, and people want to work with good people. So that's not everyone. Like, some people, they're very happy to work remotely in isolation. They'd rather not talk to people. So I don't think, we can discredit that, because if that's how they work best, then that's great. But then it goes back to being really intentional about what's the culture you're trying to build, and the people you are hiring, are they aligned to the behaviors and actions that you want to create in your organization? Are they going to add something to your culture? Or are they going to come in and disrupt it and just not fit? Because not every culture is right for everyone, and that's okay. But I think you just need to be really clear on the people that you're hiring and whether they're going to fit in your culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think this is where combining qualifications and knowledge with right people and the right fit is so important. And I was going to say to you, I think in regards to you're saying some people might not enjoy and think they work best with other people in an office. I would have to argue that I think we think that we're better at working by ourselves. We think that we're better. We might be a bit more focused. But when you do 5 days of that, and then you turn that into a month and you haven't seen anybody else, are you actually working better, smarter, more productively, more at a higher level without being able to talk to people and collaborate and build those relationships and have that kind of environment around you? If you're in your office or in a bedroom or in your lounge, 5 days.
Yeah, and some people, they might naturally be really introverted, and actually socializing is really draining for them. But then equally, you talk to those introverts who perhaps haven't spoken to anyone in a month, or hopefully that's not the case, but and their well-being is impacted. Maybe they haven't connected the dots to be like, oh, that's because I haven't socialized, and they label themselves as an introvert. But it's a really important thing to say, is like, sometimes you need, again, like those kind of like brokers to bring people together who might naturally shy away from doing those things. I know when we do our QBRs, we've had people who have been incredibly anxious to attend. That's not necessarily a reflection of our culture or the people that we have, but that's just how they feel. So how can we make that experience less anxious for them? How can, I think it's amazing that some of those people, they've openly said to me, like, oh, I feel quite anxious. And then we know that, and we can make sure that, when they arrive with someone. We can notice, like, if they're standing alone because perhaps they don't know how to have a conversation with someone that they don't interact with on a day-to-day basis, we can be like, oh, hello, Bob, come, yeah, how are you today? And bring them into the conversation. So again, it just really goes back to being intentional.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And I think I was going to make a comment on regards to like the introverts. Although introverts might think they don't like people, but everybody needs people. Everybody likes people. It's just finding the way that they need to have that connection. And then,
Exactly.
as you said, being intentional about how you create that.
Yeah, and the right social connection for them, because for them it might not be a big group. That might just be awful for them, an
Yeah.
awful experience. So then how can you create those moments where they can connect to people maybe on a one-to-one basis or a smaller group? How can you make that less of an awful experience for them?
Yeah.
How can you make it more positive experience for them? That's a better way of framing it.
Yeah. Good coaching question. I have a potentially quite challenging question for you, and I hope I don't throw you under the water with it, but I'm going to ask you
Gosh.
anyway. What is the focus for you now? Where are you going? What do you think you need to do more of to really continue doing the great things you're doing and maybe be better?
So we've really thought about this off of the back of our employee experience survey. So I've got quite clear ideas. We need to get better at our transparency and clarity around things. So we do a lot of things. We do a lot of really brilliant things, but we might not be the best at communicating them, because for I guess the exposure of the senior leaders or the managers, that's really clear because we talk about that all the time. But for other people who don't have exposure to that, it might not be as explicit as we would hope. So yeah, our focus this year, our 2024 focus, is creating more transparency and clarity, because none of what we do, we don't communicate on purpose. It's not like we're trying to hide things. It's just you do things at such a fast pace, and you're talking every day to the people who are making these decisions, that sometimes you forget, how do we communicate that down? We do that really well in big news, but on day-to-day interaction. So yeah, that's our big challenge for 2024.
Love that. I'm going to make a note about celebrating small wins for you.
Yes.
I think we'll have a personal chat about that. There's obviously a podcast. I've done videos on that, but just getting teams together and celebrating the small wins, even in meetings or one-to-ones, or as a company through newsletters, wherever it might be, just the opportunity to celebrate those small wins. But you probably already do that.
We try to. So we do a lot in our Friday meetings, our all hands meeting. We do a lot of celebrating. I think one of the things, again, we've tried in terms of creating that transparency and clarity for this year, every team has really clear objectives of what they're trying to achieve, to have that direction and to hold us account, and also to celebrate those small wins, because we can have these really ambitious goals that we're aiming for, that it can sometimes feel like you're making no progress, but we're always making progress, like always having positive progress. So yeah, we try to have that. And I think one of the things we're doing is having these quarterly reflection meetings where we're like, oh, actually, you know what? Yes, we've done X, Y, and Z. We're 5% towards the goal, but that's 5% we weren't 3 months ago.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. Is there anything else you'd like to add around what you've been up to, your people experience, your wellbeing focus, the manager's leadership, anything you feel like you've missed?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot.
We have covered a lot, and I'm here for it as well. I think it's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so important, and I know that many HR people or people in the people space, they really understand that, and they're really behind that. The struggle I've seen with other HR professionals or people in the people experience is they don't have that backing from their senior leadership. So it makes it really hard for what they're trying to achieve, or if they're thinking about being intentional, what they want to do, that it can be really hard for them if they haven't got that kind of backing. Yeah, that support. Because again, it just goes back to the culture that you're trying to build.
Yeah. I think when you don't have buy-in from people who hold the purse strings, or the management who are the role models, and the people at the top who kind of create culture, then it creates a really weird environment. But if you can get and encourage your senior leaders, the people at the very top, and have them who have the most impact on everything that can get done, and on the environment, then you're in a really great space. And it sounds like you've got that from your people.
Yeah, and I'm really lucky, and I love working with the team that I work with. I think it's also really important on that point to acknowledge like how much pressure it puts on managers if they don't have the senior leadership trying to be intentional with their behaviors and their actions to align with what they're wanting to achieve. Because you might be the most people manager ever. You may really care about your team and want the best for them. You're really trying to create this environment for them to succeed. And then you've got senior leadership team who are making decisions that are wild. They don't care about the people. And then you as a manager then have to communicate that to your team. That must be so confronting for them in terms of their personal values and what they're trying to do, that it puts so much pressure on them. And we spoke before about how much pressure managers are in or have, because they've got pressures from below, they've got pressures from clients, they've got pressures from above. And then you've got the actions of senior leaders who are creating more pressure. Like I said before, it just blows my mind, really. Yeah. But it happens, and it happens too often, I think.
Yeah, it does happen too often, especially as you get larger.
Yeah, that's going to be our next challenge, Rich. Maybe in a year's time, the conversation might be different. I might be like, help me.
No, I feel like you guys got such good things in place. I think you'll be fine. But growth's hard, and growing quickly is hard. And then when you've got you've got, let's say, 10,000 people, 100,000 people, imagine trying to do that as well, right?
Yeah, mad.
That would scare the life out of me. Scares the life out of me, even if I had one employee. Anyway, so I always leave, and you would have seen this on the podcast you watch, the guests with a final question, and that's, what are your top 3 take-home bits of advice about probably being intentional, or about kind of being a really good head of people?
So my 3 things would be really map out that employee experience and identify the moments that matter. Speak to your team to find out what are the moments that matter. Don't just assume you know what's going to be important to them. One of the other things is I would really, and we haven't spoken about this, which is another one of my big things, is really focus on building that self-awareness within yourself if you're ahead of people, within your managers, and thinking about, how do I want to show up for my team or whoever I'm interacting with? How does my language or behavior impact others? How do I regulate myself? So really make that a core focus around self-awareness. And the third one is be authentic. Do it because you want to do it. Don't do it because you think, oh, I need to do it, because people will see right through that. If you're not authentic with them and what you're saying and what you're doing on a line, that trust will be gone.
Love that. And 3 very good tips and bits. Self-awareness piece, I feel like we could have gone into a lot more detail.
Yeah, why didn't we? That is a big thing for me.
No, I mean, you led this. This is your. Right, maybe we have to come on again and talk about self-awareness again. But Chelsea, no, I really appreciate you coming on here. I think you've shared some really great information, and I appreciate you for doing that. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did. I always enjoy talking to you, Rich. Can't wait for part 2 when next year I'm like, help me.
It might be the other way around. Help me, I need help.
I've got one employee. What do I do?
I don't know what to do. But no, yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing. Stay where you are. Everybody else, if you're here listening, thank you for joining us. I have another one coming out soon. I actually can't remember who it is. It's 2 weeks' time. I've got a couple of cool people lined up. But yeah, anyway, I will see you all soon. Have a lovely Easter, everybody. And yeah, enjoy. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.